Okay, this is the lecture for Tuesday, the 9th of February, 2021, for Ancient and Medieval History. We are beginning our unit section 3B on Christianity, its origins, and so forth. Before we begin, there are a few standard things I need to go over. Number one, I am absolutely allowed and even required to talk about religion in this classroom. Why? Because I teach the history of civilization. And at the heart of all civilizations is religion. At the heart of Soviet communism was the religion or the pseudo-religion of communism. Religious ideas and philosophical ideas are the glue which hold all cultures together, because cultures are groups of people bound together by core beliefs. So if you are one of these modern, easily triggered people, you already should know that about me. A, I don't care about triggering you. B, I kind of like triggering you, because C, that makes you get involved and we talk about things in a way that matters, because this stuff is what people have in the past thought is worth living for, dying for, or even killing for. It is not mere history. It is not just a bunch of academic arcane details. It is the heart of whole groups of people, generations of people, back to the beginning of human culture and civilization. Why they were what they were. Why they did what they did. So we are not going to shy away from these things. Quite the contrary. Separation of church and state. There's no words to that effect anywhere in the founding documents of this country, not in the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, or anything else. Nowhere do the words separation of church and state appear. We are allowed a freedom of religion. I am not proselytizing. I am not trying to make you Christians of my own weird variety. I'm not. That isn't my goal. My goal is to teach you a basically mainline understanding of religion as it applies to culture. We have done that with Judaism. We will do that with Islam. We are going to, right now, or very soon, do that with the faith of Christianity. If I taught Eastern civilization, we do it with Buddhism and Confucianism. And actually, to an extent, I do that in European history. So, because I just don't do Europe, I do when Europe conquers the world. So, I'm allowed to talk about this. There is no separation of church and state that prevents me from talking about this. It is my job, and it is your job to learn about it. Now, do you have to learn about it like a believer? No. Am I going to say things that if you do happen to be a Christian believer of a particular type or denomination, am I going to say everything in line with the beliefs of your particular church denomination? No, I'm not. I was raised Roman Catholic. I have become a Reformed Protestant. The closest church to where I'd be comfortable is the old Presbyterian church, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's been replaced by this new social justice warrior church that I have nothing to do with. A lot of churches are different from their traditional selves. They've either become fundamentalists or they've become liberation theology. They've either become focused on, we know who's going to be saved or damned because of whether or not they obey our particular rule book. That's fundamentalism. It exists in Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and a variety of other ideologies. And there's liberation theology, or the woke combination of Karl Marx's ideas and Jesus Christ's ideas. In other words, a form of Christian communism, where it's about social justice and not the word of Christ. I'm not going to say things that are in conformity with any fundamentalist church or any liberation theology church. Those are two new developments. I'm going to speak about a traditional, mainstream, Catholic and mainline Protestant understanding of these things. If I say things that violate your particular belief systems, my purpose is not to violate or to tell you that your belief systems is wrong. I am telling you my best take on a fair, objective, open study of the historical Jesus, the development of the Christian faith, Christian theology, and so forth. I am not poorly educated in these matters. I do have a background. But my purpose, again, is not to tell you that your denomination is wrong or right. And my purpose is not to tell you, if you don't happen to be a Christian, that you should be one. My purpose is not to persuade you at all. It is not about what you believe, and it's not even about what I believe. It's about what they believe. They are ancestors culturally. They, the people in the past that we are studying. It is about the idea of Christianity that has been passed for 2,000 years now, nearly 2,000 years, through Western civilization. And since Western civilization coheres around the Christian faith like water around a mote of dust to form a raindrop, this is rather important. We've studied Judaism as a foundation for Christianity and for its own sake. We're going to study Islam as an alternative to Christianity and for its own sake. But in studying Christianity, we are studying the core belief system of Western civilization from the 320s AD, when the Emperor Constantine sets up a council to come up with a creed for all Christians, up through at least the 1960s or 70s, when people in the United States believed that we were a Christian nation that was tolerant of other beliefs, or that we were a Judeo-Christian nation that was tolerant of other beliefs. Since the 1970s, we're experimenting with wacky, crazy religious neutrality and the notion of a secular humanist state that the jury is still out on, whether or not that's going to be stable, whether or not that's going to last, whether or not that's compatible with the Constitution or with American notions of freedom. We will see if we can be a culture that does not have a fundamental belief system to hold us together, other than the belief in some variant of tolerance. We'll see. I say all of these things because there are a few things that thrum people's heartstrings more radically than religion. I'm from a family of New Yorkers, so when I grew up, what we would do when we gathered as a family is we would sit around talking politics and religion. We would irritate one another. We would start yelling at one another. That was our way of expressing our love, our family love. Yes, my family was that messed up. But we did it, and we kept doing it, and we didn't walk away hating the other person. We walked away sometimes thinking the other person was foolish or misguided, or even that word that rhymes with Cupid, but we did not stop talking to one another. That's a New York thing. I understand. Most Americans, when they have a family gathering, would rather chew their own fingers off than have people talk about politics or religion. Think about Thanksgiving or Christmas this year, if your families got together at all, or in past years. Think about big family barbecues. Did Uncle Joe, who happens to be a Trump supporter, argue with Aunt Eunice, who happens to be a Hillary supporter or a Biden supporter? Did their argument get out of hand? That's life. But a lot of Americans, well, we like to have our family gatherings without the politics or without the religion. I know for a fact that there were a bunch of people Sunday. I'm not a football fan, so I didn't watch the Super Bowl. But there were a lot of people who wanted to bring politics into Super Bowl stuff. There have been a lot of increasing numbers of political ads during the Super Bowl and political commentary during the Super Bowl over the last few years. But politics and religion are central to what we do in this classroom. It is central to the understanding of human beings. You can't understand us without understanding our beliefs. And no, I do not accept as a default an atheistic proposition. I do not believe that there is science which tells the truth and that there are a religion which allows people to imagine. No, I don't believe that. Science doesn't deal in truth, it deals in theory. Theories that are provisional. Truth, that rare, rare thing, truth is a product of imagination and belief, not a product of experimentation and proof. Those are facts. Facts are usually not things people consider worth living for, dying for, or killing for. Truth is. Because we infuse truth with our imagination. We take a stand. We decide what we believe in and what we don't. So I understand that this is powerful stuff. I understand that some of you may find it difficult. I understand that some of your families may find it difficult. I suggest if they don't understand why I'm doing this, that you show them the lecture I'm giving right now on video, so that they hear from my own words why we're doing this. And I don't apologize for it. It's at the core of my mission. I have it on my door. If you're studying history and at some point somebody doesn't get offended, you're not doing it right. You're doing it on a superficial level. A lot of history is made over the question of what is true. And a lot of the wars we've studied, and a lot of the civilizations rising and falling that we've studied, are all about this question of truth. And if you're not tweaked by it, I have to wonder why. Maybe you're just not at a point yet where you appreciate why this stuff matters. All I can do is say, you'll do that at some point. And at some point, when you understand why this stuff matters, it'll be good for you, I think, and I hope to have some experience thinking about it. Even if it's from a time when you didn't see the connection to your world, to your life. Are there any questions, comments, or thoughts before we go into details about this? Miss Flores.
Are you sure you don't say these things to trigger people because it's funny to watch?
Oh, you know how they get rid of mines and minefields?
Yeah.
They trigger them. I'm saying all of this now so that if you're of a type of personality or of a type of faith that isn't used to talking about this stuff, that you understand quite clearly what we're going to be doing. And that you understand even more clearly what my attitude about this is. I am not going to be delicate. I will be respectful, but not delicate. I will deal with the reality that whatever you believe is your business, but I am not going to hold back on talking about what other people believe and believed. And if you get triggered by it, I would rather have you talk to me about any particular concerns you have either now or after class or before class tomorrow. Come by during study lab. That's what it's for. Talk to your teachers sometimes if there are concerns that you and your family have. I have had students that are atheists, that are pagans, that are communists, that are anarcho-syndicalists, that are Jehovah's Witnesses, that are Mormons, that are Roman Catholics, that are Latin Rite Roman Catholics, that are Lutherans, that are Presbyterians, that are Baptists, Anabaptists. I've never had a Quaker or a Shaker.
What are those?
They are variants of Protestantism.
Oh.
I've had students who are Native American and who follow the traditional beliefs of their people. I've had students from Europe, students from Asia as exchange students. I've had people of all types, or as many types as I can think of, pass through my classroom. And they've all, in some way or another, encountered this. So, for what it's worth, if you are disturbed by anything, you're not the first, and you won't be the last. But I'd rather you talk to me about it and understand why we're doing it and how we're doing it. That's why I began this way. Any other questions or comments before we go in? There's an old expression, I'll be mellow when I'm dead. Well, I may be mellow when I'm dead, but I'll never be PC. If you expect that, you're in the wrong place. Okay, so we begin. Remember, the door is open if you want to come talk to me later or some other time. And by the way, if you actually come to the conclusion that I am destined for hellfire and damnation, again, you won't be the first to come to that conclusion. I leave myself in God's hands because I'm not perfect. Okay, Unit 3B, Christianity. The historical Jesus is primarily what we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to be talking about what people believe about Jesus. But this is funny. I think it was Alexa, but it may be Siri. One of these talky computery things. You ask them, who is the Prophet Muhammad? The Prophet Muhammad is a man who was a prophet of the Islamic faith. He received revelations from Allah, and he is believed to be the holy prophet of Islam. He wrote the Quran. Who is Jesus Christ? A mythical figure. Now, if that doesn't indicate tech industry bias, I don't know what it is, what does. But it's fundamentally and factually wrong. Jesus was not a mythical figure. He may have been a Jewish guy from Palestine, but he wasn't mythical. Joshua or Yeshua bar Joseph existed. He was a man. He walked the world. His experiences caused people to found a religion based on his teachings and his life. Moses existed. Abraham existed. David existed. Muhammad existed. Prince Gautama, who's known as the Buddha, existed. Zoroaster existed. Mani existed. Confucius existed. These are not mythical figures. These are historical figures who all established belief systems that people, millions of people around the world today, still follow. Mythical figures. No. Jesus of Nazareth existed. There is a historical Jesus. And to understand the man, you need to understand his times. Jesus was not born into a time of peace and prosperity, of calm and comfort, of stability. He was born into a nation that is as close to a literal powder keg waiting for a spark as has ever been in the history of human beings. Judea, in the time of the historical Jesus, was a culture on the verge of revolution, civil war, and everything in between. Political war, fratricidal clan war, imperial Roman war, and all sorts of other things. So let's talk about this. First of all, Jesus was born Jewish. In fact, Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. People called him teacher. The translation of teacher is rabbi. He taught in synagogues, which is something that rabbis do. He was part of the tradition, the rabbinical tradition. In fact, the rabbinical tradition changes after Jesus' time, after the diaspora, the second diaspora, the diaspora of Hadrian. But Jesus was not some I mean, Hitler loved this one. You want to see Hitler and Nazis' head explode? Talk about the Jewish birth of Jesus Christ. I mean, Hitler wasn't a Christian. He was a person who tried to reestablish German paganism. But no, to him, Hitler was a Roman bastard child who was somehow secreted among the Jews. He couldn't have been Jewish because so many Germans who followed Hitler were Christian. How can you square your anti-Semitism with the fact that Jesus was Jewish? And throughout his life, he said things like, I come not to take away or to add one iota to the law. The book of Matthew, the first of the four Gospels, is a book that connects Jesus to the Jewish tradition of Messiah. And that's particularly what I want to talk about here, the Jewish tradition of Messiah, the Messianic tradition. The word Messiah refers to God coming into the world to end history and bring paradise back. God coming into the world to end history and to bring paradise back. The Messiah is God reaching into his own creation to conclude it, to perfect it. So the Messiah, is he the Son of God? Yeah. Is he God? Yeah. The God is one. God is one. The Lord is God. God is one. So, where does this idea of the Messiah, the Redeemer, the Savior, the hand of God to perfect reality come from? Well, let's understand sin. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, we are not born with sin. We are born for the Garden of Eden. In fact, we are not born. Adam and Eve are born. Whether Adam and Eve would have had children in the Garden of Eden, or whether they would have lived immortal in paradise, just the two of them, I don't know, because things changed. Because God did not create mind-numbed robots. God created Adam and Eve with what we call free will. Now, this is useful advice for when you're in a relationship with someone, because it's wonderful to be in a relationship with somebody that you love and somebody who loves you. It's absolutely thrilling. However, something that good can make you greedy, can make a lot of people greedy. And those people tend to become jealous. They're jealous.
Jealous?
Jealous. They become jealous. And why am I saying it that way? It's like they're jealous. They're like gelling. They're jelly. Don't be jelly. They are jealous because they're afraid that the person who they love and who says they love them will leave or will cheat, will go out with someone else, will betray them, will be unfaithful. And a jealous person can soon become a truly obnoxious person. Where were you? What were you doing the other night? I tried calling. You weren't where you were supposed to be. And you end up with control freaky stuff. If you're in a relationship with somebody like that and they won't change, really, you should rethink the relationship. That's as close to genuine advice as I can give you. Do not stay in a relationship with an abusive person. Maybe they don't appreciate it. Maybe they're inexperienced with relationships. Maybe they're trying their best and they just don't understand. So explain it to them. Give them a chance to learn, maybe. But if they don't change, if they continue to be hyper-possessive, hyper-paranoid, jealous, controlling, not healthy. Not healthy for you, not healthy for them. We have free will. If you love someone, set them free. If you love someone, set them free. If you set them free and they come back to you, then the love is real. If you set them free and they don't, then you have to wonder if it was really love or something else. That's the antidote to jealousy, an appreciation that you cannot control that person. Heck, most people realize at some point that they can't even control their own lives beyond a very limited point, let alone really being able to control another person. You love someone, set them free. God didn't create slaves. He created free people. He created man and woman. That's the belief. So with that freedom of choice comes the ability to do wrong. And the story goes that Eve is seduced by the serpent in the garden to eat of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. Eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is one of two trees that God said, don't eat that fruit, not from the tree of life, nor from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But the serpent says to Eve, but if you understand the difference between good and evil, you could be like God. And then you'll be like God. And you'll be able to have a conversation with God as an equal. Because like him, you'll understand good and evil. And she says, okay. And then because misery loves company, hey, Anna, you got to try this. What is it? It's the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What? It is. And it's good. It's tasty. You should have some. God said, no, come on, Adam. Okay, honey. With that comes our ability to understand sin. And with that choice comes sin. Sin is when you disobey God. So Adam and Eve have both used their free will to disobey God and to eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They are no longer fit for paradise because they're no longer innocent. The thing about innocence, this is why child molestation is such a horrible crime. There are things that if you hurt will grow back. You get a cut in your arm, it'll probably heal. But there are parts of you that won't heal. When a doctor sliced my optic nerve between my left eye and my brain, not completely through, but partially through, that is a kind of nerve damage that does not regenerate. I am therefore still legally blind in my left eye. doesn't regenerate, doesn't heal. Once a wound happens to a certain part of your brain or nervous system, it's there, it's permanent. Innocence is like that. You have it, and then it's gone, and you'll never get that particular innocence back again. A child who's had that innocence stolen from them by a sexual predator will never have that back. Their ability to trust, their ability to be comfortable within their own skin, all of that will be harmed. Not just now, but for the rest of their lives. For the rest of their lives, they live in the echo of that scream inside as they were violated. Adam and Eve no longer were innocent. They were aware that they were naked. They hid from God. God realized what they had done. And an angel with a fiery sword drove them out of the Garden of Eden into the world. A world that is harsh, where they have to live by the sweat of their brow. A world where children will be brought into the world with great pain, thus the agony of childbirth, and all of this stuff. The world that we live in. The world that we live in, we inhabit because of sin.
Actually, this is kind of just a random question, just because we're talking.
Can you speak a little louder?
This is just kind of like a random question just for you, but like, have you ever watched Good Omens? Because it's kind of like deals with like a lot of this kind of.
No, I haven't. I've never even heard of it. What is Good Omens?
Oh, it's like it's kind of like a twist on the Adam and Eve story, kind of.
Okay.
So it like revolves around an angel and a demon who basically God is like, well, the world's gonna end at this time, and it's like ineffable, and they're like, well, we like the world though, and they basically are on like this message to like this mission to like go and like save the world from like there's like the four like plague people and like
Yeah, the plague, war, death.
Yeah, it's the apocalypse people, and it's just like super interesting, and they go through it. There's like
if it occurs to you the next time you're at a computer, send me a link.
Okay.
Sounds interesting. Thank you. Okay, so what does Adam and Eve have to do with us? Well, I'm going to explain this in a Catholic way because this is how I learned it, but it is sort of a generic Judeo-Christian idea. We inherit our sin through our birth. We are sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, and we are therefore inheritors of the original sin of Adam and Eve, their disobedience to God. We are born in sin. They weren't. We are born in sin. And that explains, that's a theological way of explaining the fact that human nature is dark. Human nature is dark. See a 2-year-old taking. See kids at play, bullying. It's innocent, but it's not. Because people are not always nice. People are not always generous. People are sometimes really bleeping nasty. And that's explained theologically that we are born with the taint of that sin, with the taint of it on us. Now, what that means is that we're going to have trouble with our free will. Our free will is going to result in us sinning. You can't help it. The most saintly individual that you've ever heard of, and the most saintly individual in modern times that I've ever heard of is a woman named Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Now, Mother Teresa is somebody that, regardless of your religion, is, I think, absolutely admirable. She was born in Eastern Europe. She suffered Nazism in her girlhood and then communism. She became a Catholic nun and went to Calcutta, one of the largest cities in India, in Asia. I think it was Calcutta. It may have been Bombay. She went to this massive Indian city, and I think it was Calcutta. And in Calcutta, or in this city, what she did was she spent her time with people who were dying in the street alone. See, in India, because of the caste system, because of the belief in fate and karma and dharma, and then the transmigration of the soul from body to body, and because India has been crowded and poverty-stricken since ancient times, it's not unusual to encounter people dead in the street or dying. And Hindus, good people, will walk by. Well, she found her calling in holding babies that were dying and physically comforting people who had disease, plague. And she was so brave that other people began to join her. Soon, a new order of Catholic nuns appears, and their goal is to go to the poverty-stricken places of India and the world and offer personal comfort to those who are forgotten, lost, and dying. She became world famous, Mother Teresa did, but she never became rich. Everything that came her way as a result of her fame was put into making it more possible for the sisters who were doing that incredible work to do that work better. She is as close to a living saint as I can think of in the modern world. She died the same weekend as Princess Diana of Britain. And of course, the media were all agog about Princess Di, not so much about Mother Teresa. Even her, she had sinful thoughts. She talked about them. People, she said, people look at me as a saint. I'm not. I'm not. I have sinful impulses. I get angry in my heart. I blame people in my heart. I'm not always perfect in my dealings with people. Now, if she's going to be recognizing publicly her own sin, how much more is it that you and I, in our normal lives, don't obey everything that God asks us to do? Maybe there's a part of us that doesn't even want to. That is all explained by this taint, this original sin that comes from Adam and Eve. You don't have to believe it. I want you to understand this. This is part of the Jewish tradition, part of the Christian tradition. It's even, to an extent, in a weird way, part of the Islamic tradition. Now, at the beginning of the year, I told you, as part of the background to the terror attacks of 9/11, I told you the story of the ancient Hebrews, from Abraham, the first monotheistic believer. Abram leaves Sumeria, comes to Canaan, is willing to sacrifice his son, although he doesn't want to. The covenant, God teaches and leads, the people of Israel serve and learn and follow, which is the basis of the Jewish faith. I told the story of Moses and how the Hebrews had come into Egyptian slavery, and how through many miracles and plagues, the people of Egypt and the leadership of Egypt are punished until they let the people go. I told you the story of how the Jews wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, and those who survived in the wilderness were desert tough commandos who conquered the land of Canaan under Joshua. The walls of Jericho fell. I told you about David, a shepherd boy chosen by God's prophet to be the champion of Israel's army against the Philistines, and how David meets Goliath, fully body armored, this massive, experienced, giant wrestler type warrior. And David, a kid about your age, with a sling and a rock. But down goes Goliath because of the will of God. I told you about David and Solomon at the height of ancient Israel's glory and power, and about the Babylonian captivity and the terrible choice that many Babylonians gave to Jews. Starve in this cell or eat pork. Starve in this cell or deny your God. Admit that Marduk is superior to Yahweh, and all will be forgiven. And the Jews refused and refused and refused. It's heroic. I told about Cyrus I of Persia, who freed the Jews from the Babylonian captivity, allowed them to return home and build their temple as long as they obeyed the laws. I told you how the Jews didn't react so well to the Greeks when Alexander and the Macedonians and the Greeks conquered Israel on the way from Syria to Egypt and back. And how ultimately this tension between Greeks and Jews, who both thought of themselves as the God's gift to the world, the Jews were God's gift to the world because they were the only ones that God had chosen to learn his ways, to live by his covenant. That's a sacred trust. Jews weren't powerful, they weren't wealthy, they weren't considered sophisticated in those days, but they were the people of God. Whereas the Greeks said, look at democracy, philosophy, science, theology, geometry, it's us, we're brilliant. We're just so brilliant. And you cannot have two people that both think that where it counts, they're the best. They don't get along. So you have the rise of the Maccabees. and the casting out of the Greeks, and a brief period of Jewish independence. But that ends with the arrival of Pompey and the Romans, and the Jews are brought under Roman rule. So I quickly go over that to remind you. Now we're going to talk about Millenarianism. Millenarianism deals with a concept known as the millennium. The millennium is the 1,000 years, but it's not a literal 1,000 years. It's a reference to heaven on earth. It's a reference to the world after the Messiah. It's a reference to the perfected world after the Messiah. So let's talk about millenarianism. One of its characteristics is a belief that the world that is absolutely irredeemably stinky. The world that is flawed, it's broken. It is filled with sin. It is filled with evil. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. The innocent children die while that fat old man who's evil to everyone lives a long and healthy life. In this world, it seems like the devil and the evil is rewarded and the good is always punished, and the innocent always suffer. Our world is a broken world, a fallen world, an irredeemable world, completely and utterly without redeeming features. A millenarian looks at the world around them and does not see a world filled with possibilities, with joy, with beauty of nature, with beautiful sunrises and sunsets, with the cuteness of puppies and kittens, with the thrill of first love's first kiss. No. A millenarian looks at the world and sees something broken and fallen, not worth saving. However, there is hope. Millenarians have hope. And their hope is this, that God will break into his own creation, that the Messiah will come. It will be the day of the Lord. And in the day of the Lord, all wrongs will be righted. All sins will be punished or forgiven. The wheat will be separated from the chaff, which is the leftover parts of the wheat that we don't use. The chaff will be consumed by fire. The wheat will be the only thing that is left. On the day of the Lord, the world that we know ends. It is doomsday, judgment day, the apocalypse. Kingdoms will fall, economies will collapse, wealth will vanish. The life that we have known will go away. And the only survivors will be God's chosen people, chosen individually for their righteousness. That's a scary thing. Judgment Day, the day of the Lord. And even millenarians look at it with fear, look at it with trepidation. They both hope for it and are terrified by it, hoping that God will find them worthy of survival. After the day of the Lord comes the millennium, the 1,000 years of peace on earth. The millennium is a perfected society, a society of virtue, utopia on earth, the New Jerusalem, call it what you will. It is not like this world. It is not a world of freedom to sin. It is not a world of freedom to oppress or abuse others or yourself. It is a world where the survivors and their descendants grow up good. It is a world that rewards good and not evil. It is the purified world, the cleansed world, the world after purgation. Paradise on earth, a new age. And then the universe will end after the 1,000 years of peace, whatever that means. So, if you are a millenarian, you're not going to tend to be warm and fuzzy about the world around you or even the people around you, not beyond a certain point, because the fundamental truth about them, according to your millenarianism, is they are burnt flesh. They just haven't started to combust yet. Now, there are millenarian Jews, there are millenarian Christians of various denominations, there are millenarian Muslims. The former president of Iran, about 15, 20 years ago, was named Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was a terrorist who held Americans hostage in 1980 as a young man. As president of Iran, he talked wistfully about purging Israel with God's cleansing fire. In other words, he was talking about if Iran got a hold of nuclear weapons, using them right away on the Jews of Israel, burning them away. He was an Islamic, and is an Islamic millenarian. In fact, one of the scary things about the leadership of the Iranian Islamic Republic is they believe that the Messiah walks the world now. The Sunni Muslims would call him the Mahdi. The Shiite Muslims, who are the Iranians, call him the 12th Imam. Either way, they believe the Messiah is here and now, waiting to change the world. And they believe that if they can initiate this process by burning Israel. Now, not every Iranian leader believes this, but a lot of them do. And the thought that they may be in possession of, or that they may soon be in possession of atomic weapons. We have never seen a country with atomic and nuclear weapons in the hands of people who have basically an ancient or a medieval approach to religion, who are hoping for the apocalypse because they believe it will usher in a paradise where they and the righteous are the only ones left. In other words, they would destroy the world if they thought they would rule the ashes. That's a scary thing. Millenarianism is something that's very, very present in the Judea of Jesus' time. The belief that the world is broken, that a Messiah will come and put everything right, and the day of the Lord will be followed by the millennium of peace. Now, what is this Messiah to look like? Well, what the expectation is the Messiah will be a strong figure, a man on horseback, a powerful king or nobleman, a warlord, a person who is able to put the neck of the Gentile under the heel of the faithful, a person who is a lot like Muhammad, actually. If you remember when we talked about the prophet Muhammad at the beginning of the year. Somebody who will lead in war, who will lead in peace, who will establish a nation of virtue, who will set up laws for the faithful. A king, a general, a prophet, a magic man, all rolled up into one. That's the Messiah. So the belief in a Messiah is fundamentally different from the man that Jesus of Nazareth was, which is one reason why many Jews in those days absolutely did not see Jesus' claim to be the Messiah as reasonable or rational. Because the way Jesus was and how he acted and what he did was not what they expected. I'm not saying they are wrong. That's a matter of faith. I'm saying that Jesus did not meet the bill. He did not meet the expectations or the descriptions of the Messiah that had been passed among the Jewish people for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think that's where we're going to leave it. Roman Judea in the time of Christ is a broken land filled with people who believe that the world that is in need of replacement. Questions, comments, or thoughts? I don't see any. Thank you for your attention. Have a happy and wondrous day.